following subject matter is real and only intended for mature audiences. Discretion is advised.
People are dead after deputies say a man went on a shooting rampage.
I knew a week before she died I was going to kill her.
I can tell you the scene out there is absolutely horrific.
Nobody knows where this individual may strike next.
This is 10-Minute Murder.
Welcome to 10-Minute Murder, brief and bingeable true crime. Hi, I'm Joe, I'm the host, and thank you for joining today. If you're new to 10-Minute Murder, or if you aren't new but just haven't subscribed yet, you can take a moment to do that right now, and you won't miss any future episodes when you are a subscriber. 10-Minute Murder is also on Facebook and Instagram, so if you're also on social media, the link to connect is in the show notes of this episode. I also have Twitter. I don't mention Twitter that much because I don't get on Twitter that much, to be honest with you. But I have one, and when I remember that I have one, I usually will post to there as well. Today, if you read the title of the episode, we're talking about the Menendez brothers. And this past summer, I was scrolling around Crime Talk, corner of TikTok, where they talk about true crime. And by the way, there are some really great true crime creators on TikTok. It's not all just dancing and silly skits. There's actually some good stuff there. But as I was watching videos, I started seeing more and more about the Menendez brothers, which in and of itself is not weird. It was a pretty famous case. But the people that were posting content, some of those videos were disturbing. Maybe 80% of the content, they were talking about how attractive the Menendez brothers are. They were posting the Menendez brothers' mugshots and candid photos of them wearing like tennis outfits and stuff, saying stuff like the Menendez brothers could get it. What? Now, I will concede that some of the people posting this, and the majority of the people posting this, were probably not even alive in 1989 when these murders happened. So I suppose that makes it a little easier to disassociate the crime from the criminal. I still found it a little bit weird, but at that moment, I decided to add the Menendez brothers to the list of stories that I have that I will possibly cover. And this is something I never talked about before, but on my phone, I keep a running list. If you've submitted an episode that you'd like to have on 10-Minute Murder, I've got it in my phone. And in some of my free time, I go through those cases and look up information and do a little research to see if there's enough information there to make an interesting 10-Minute Murder episode. And you guys have sent me amazing suggestions on stories that I should cover on this podcast. So that's why it's been since this summer that I put this on the list that I'm just now getting to it. The night of August 20th, 1989 was going to be the last in the lives of Jose and Kitty Menendez. They just didn't know it yet. The wealthy couple in their mid-40s lived comfortably in their Beverly Hills house. Jose was a handsome Cuban immigrant who had been living in the States since the age of 16. He was born in 1944 to an upper-middle-class family in Havana. Jose's father was a well-known soccer player who owned his own accounting firm, and his mother was a swimmer elected to Cuba's Sports Hall of Fame. After Castro came to power, Jose's parents saw their lives in Cuba would never be the same, so they decided to send their son to the United States. Jose arrived penniless, in addition to not even speaking or understanding English, but he was determined to succeed and have his own American dream, and so he did. Through hard work, Jose eventually found himself working as a chief executive for Live Entertainment, a leading Hollywood home video distributor. Jose also sat on the board of Live's parent company, Carolco Pictures. That might sound familiar to you because that company produced Rambo and Terminator movies. So it's safe to say that Jose became pretty successful, and that success allowed his wife, Mary Louise, who everybody called Kitty, to stay home and not have a job. Kitty was born in 1941 to Charles and May Anderson as the youngest of 4 children. Her family lived in Oak Lawn, Chicago. Kitty's father owned a heating and air conditioning business that was doing really well, and May was a stay-at-home mother taking care of Kitty and her 2 older brothers and sister. Unfortunately, while the Anderson family appeared loving and supportive, Charles often beat up his wife and children behind closed doors. As a result, Kitty's parents eventually divorced, leaving the young Kitty convinced that divorce was the worst thing that could ever happen in a woman's life, as her mother just became bitter and depressed and never remarried. After college, Kitty dreamed about pursuing a career in producing and directing commercial, radio, and television programs. But then she met a man named Jose Menendez, The two quickly became inseparable and got married in 1963 and moved to New York City. The couple's first son, Joseph Lyle Menendez, who goes by his middle name, was born January 10, 1968. His little brother Eric was born November 27, 1970. However, the marriage was not only sunshine and rainbows. It's pretty far from it, actually. Jose had numerous affairs, the longest one beginning in 1978 with a woman named Louise. After finding out about the relationship between the two in 1986, Kitty spiraled into a depression, and she even talked about committing suicide. She didn't want to go through a divorce as her parents had done. In the end, Kitty did not go through either of the possibilities, but stayed with Jose. And you can't really blame her for still wanting to try after 23 years of marriage and not wanting to leave her boys with a broken home. On August 20th, 1989, the brothers, Eric, 18, and Lyle, 21, spent some time swimming and playing tennis, of course, in their own backyard. Behind the 8-bedroom Mediterranean-style mansion at 722 North Elm Drive, just below Sunset Boulevard, was lots of room for any outdoor activity you could possibly imagine. The family lived in the fashionable and peaceful neighborhood just around 8 months after moving there from Calabasas. The reason for the change had not been Jose's work or urge to live in Beverly Hills, but the fact that he had tried to save face. In Calabasas, Jose's sons spent their free time burglarizing homes of their friends and neighbors. And you might ask why rich kids would do such a thing. But according to Eric and Lyle, it's just easier to steal than ask for money from their father. And that might tell you something about Jose's parenting methods. But let's get back to the events of Sunday, August 20th. Around 1 p.m., a friend and former tennis coach of the brothers, Perry Berman, arrived at his West Hollywood apartment. There, he found a voice message from Lyle Menendez on his answering machine. As Perry tried to return the call, he was greeted by Jose, who answered and told him that Lyle and Eric were out shopping at the Beverly Center. Some hours later, around 5 p.m., Lyle called Perry again and suggested getting together later that evening. They agreed to meet at about 10 p.m. at the Taste of LA Food Festival. At first, the brothers planned to go to the movies. After enjoying dinner at home with their parents, Eric and Lyle walked out to Eric's white Ford Escort that had been parked in the alley behind their house. They drove to the AMC Cinema at Century City Shopping Center, while Jose and Kitty settled in the family home to watch a James Bond movie, The Spy Who Loved Me. It was a rare occasion for the couple to be alone as the boys and their housekeeper were all out of the house. According to those close to the family, Jose and Kitty's marriage had actually been improving lately from what it had been in a long time, and having quality time together I'm sure felt nice. At some point, with Kitty sitting next to him, Jose started to doze off with his legs up on the coffee table. While the alarm system to the house was not on, the two didn't give much of a thought to it. The boys were always setting it off by accident, so Jose rarely even turned it on anymore. Besides, what could happen in their safe and quiet neighborhood in Beverly Hills? Just after 10 p.m., a neighbor heard weird noises. Arville Crom described it as popping sounds, like firecrackers. The idea of gunshots came to Arville's mind, and he thought about calling 911, but at the same time, it felt stupid. Surely there were no gunshots fired in their neighborhood. Moments before, two people had entered the Menendez family home through the double doors located off the front lobby, carrying 12-gauge Mossberg shotguns. They walked quietly down the hallway toward the family room, located in the back of the house. There, they found Jose dozing off on the tan leather couch, with Kitty lying next to him under a blanket, her head on Jose's lap. Without hesitation, one of the men raised his weapon and fired 2 shots at the sleeping couple. Pellets hit the French doors behind the couch and Jose's arms, immobilizing him. The shooter then walked behind the couch, pressed his gun against the back of Jose's head, and fired again. There was not much left after that. As it was later described, Jose suffered explosive decapitation. Kitty woke up to find herself splattered by Jose's blood and brain matter. The most obvious move was to try to get as far away as possible from the 2 men who had just killed her husband. Unfortunately, Kitty was only able to take a step or 2 before she was shot in the leg and the arm. Kitty fell between the couch and the coffee table. She struggled to stand again, but she slipped on her own blood. Another shot was fired. Kitty was now lying helplessly on the floor, but still breathing, while the killer riddled her body with shotgun pellets. At some point, the shooters ran out of ammunition, and Kitty just had to lie there and wait her fate until one of them came back with a reloaded gun and pressed it against her cheek. Finally, Kitty's world went black. When it was all over, Jose was shot 5 times, while Kitty had 10 shots in her body, 4 of them in her head. Every bone in her face was broken. One of the shots had been fired so close to her leg, it had broken the bone, and Kitty's left leg bent at 45 degrees. After finishing off their victims, the killers carefully gathered the shell casings from the spreading pools of blood that were now covering the couch, floor, and rug before leaving the house. Meanwhile, it had been a quiet night for the Beverly Hills Police Department headquarters. Not a single dispatch for the last half an hour. But then came a call at 11:47. A voice of a clearly distraught young man said, "Somebody killed my parents." As patrol officers arrived on the scene, they heard screaming inside the mansion. A moment later, as 2 young men ran outside directly toward the police, they were ordered to sit down on the ground by the officers. Eric and Lyle Menendez complied, but kept screaming, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. Oh my God, I can't believe it," before suddenly pointing at the house saying, "Just go see. Go in and see." Inside, one of the officers found the bodies of Jose and Kitty Menendez in the family room. There was no point in checking for a pulse. He knew immediately that they were dead. The only questions left were who had fired the shots and why. That's today's 10-minute murder. Brief and bingeable true crime. Thanks for listening today, and like I mentioned at the beginning, if you are not yet subscribed to this podcast, if you're new or not new, just if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do that now, and you won't miss any episodes in the future, and you definitely won't miss part 2 of this story. And by the way, if you have friends and you think that they could be into brief true crime stories like this, please be sure to share 10-Minute Murder with them. Thanks for listening. Be safe and have a good night.